Hello and welcome to this episode of Hospo Talks. My name's Abby and I am the Brand Director for Bums on Seat, and we are having conversations with thought leaders and experienced operators from across the sector to discuss the current challenges that our industry is facing. And this is part of the Bums on Seats campaign, No to Last Orders, the fight against hospitality closures 2023. And today I am super excited to be joined by Kate Nicholls OBE, the CEO of UKHospitality. Hello, Kate.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Very good. I'm really pleased to be here talking to you.
Oh, thank you. We really appreciate your support and your time. I know that you are an exceptionally busy woman, so even having this half an hour to chat to you is really exciting. So thank you. So do you want to, obviously, I'm pretty sure everyone watching this will know who you are and who UKHospitality are, but would you like to just start by telling us a little bit about kind of your role and the work that you do with UKHospitality?
Yes, of course. So I'm Kate. I'm Chief Executive at UKHospitality, which is the national trade body, the only national trade body that represents hospitality owners, operators and businesses. We have 700 member companies. Between them, they operate over 100,000 pubs, bars, restaurants, nightclubs, and hotels and visitor accommodation. It's everything from a single site independent business right the way through to the national and multinational chains. And my role is sort of fourfold, really. It's to be the voice and face of the sector, to promote the sector as a great place to grow, work and invest. It's to campaign for the sector to get the support that it needs from government or to push back against the unnecessary costs of doing business. It's to provide businesses with the insight, support, guidance and advice that they need to be able to grow their business, to survive. And finally, it's about being able to make sure we're looking ahead, forward scanning, making sure that we've got a sustainable and resilient business and sector going forward, and looking at promoting the positive messages that we need to look at in terms of ESG, people, policies, workforce strategy, sustainability. So that's really my role. So the role of the trade association is to be the sort of champion, defender, campaigner, insurance policy for businesses in the sector to make sure that they can thrive.
Wow, that's quite a lot. So I know obviously you've been so incredibly vocal about the ongoing rail strikes in particular, and that was one thing that I really wanted to talk to you about today. I know that UKHospitality have kind of estimated that they've already cost the industry about 2.5 billion, and they had such a huge impact in December and over the Christmas trade for a lot of operators as well. And obviously we've got some more coming up next week as well, which is great. And I know that kind of a lot of what you've been kind of touching on is kind of pushing the government to sort these out sooner rather than later. But obviously in that interim, while they are ongoing, have you got any kind of processes that you would advise operators to put in place to kind of counter those ongoing rail strikes? Any advice that you'd give to operators who have to just deal with them for the time being?
Well, I think you're right. The rail strikes have had a really devastating impact on the sector, and what we're seeing over the course of the second half of last year, and certainly with the rail strikes that are planned going forward, they've switched from focusing on weekdays, which is when people were commuting, coming into work. Obviously, a strike is there to cause maximum disruption, and previously that would have disrupted commuters, and commuters would have got angry, and that would have put pressure on employers and the government to resolve it. Actually, with people working from home increasingly or able to work from home where they choose to, those strikes are having less disruption. So what we're seeing is the hit now moving towards weekends and leisure travel, deliberately targeting big events. It started with Glastonbury weekend. You can see the latest strikes that are coming through are hitting weekend more than they are midweek. And then you've got into April and May, impacts on Coronation, impact potentially on Eurovision, impact on travel and tourism and sports activities going forward. So you can see a deliberate targeting of times when hospitality businesses would be most reliant, and that's causing a major pain. I think what we're talking to operators about is going forward, making sure that they have really good communication with their customers. Actually, what's happening now is that about 20 to 30% of rail services are coming. Talking to a lot of businesses across the north, that's often standard service at the moment, because you're seeing so many cancellations, even not on strike days. So it's not just the strikes, it's the lack of a reliable transport system. So making sure you're checking what's happening, the dates that those strikes are hitting, and looking at ways you can communicate to your customers that you're still open, they can still come and see you, that services are still running to some degree, rather than it being an all or nothing closed down. And then secondly, it is, if you are in that unfortunate situation where you are highly travel dependent, then it is about making sure that you take that tough decision. Is it better to close and conserve revenues in the current cost of living, cost of doing business crisis? But I think also then finally, talk to your local councillors, talk to your local MPs, ask them to put pressure on centrally for all stakeholders to come together and resolve this situation, and talk to your local councillors about whether there is business rates relief that might be available.
Yeah, amazing. And I think, so you've obviously just touched on there the cost of living crisis, and obviously we know that's had a huge impact on the sector recently as well. It's kind of, we know that product costs have been increased by about 30%, and obviously that, unfortunately, that cost does have to run down to the guest, unfortunately. How have you found the cost of living crisis has changed guest behaviour recently?
Well, what we're seeing on a positive note is that despite the intense pressures and the cost of living crisis, we are still seeing a high degree of loyalty towards hospitality. We do a consumer pulse survey with CGA Strategy, which is published monthly, and that looks at guest behaviour. You're seeing around half of customers saying that whenever they've got disposable income, they're going to prioritise spending that on eating and drinking out, and then secondly on days out and hotel accommodation and day trips in the UK. So we can see that customer loyalty, that customer desire for experience that came through post-pandemic is still there, and people want to come out and socialise with people. So we're seeing core hospitality consumers still coming out as frequently as they have done in the past. Maybe they're not spending as much, maybe trading down, maybe having that fixed income so that they're not, as I say, only able to spend a certain amount, but they are still coming out. It's the non-core customers that are staying away or trading down and trading out of hospitality altogether. But at the moment, trading down rather than staying away and staying at home seems to be the prevalent trend, which is positive. And it does show that every single time you get some positive good news from the economy, customers feel confident to go out and spend. So it's that fickle magic elixir of consumer confidence that is key at the moment. That's why the rail strikes are so damaging. That's why ongoing political spats are so damaging, because it talks about confidence in the British economy. And if consumers don't feel confident, they're not going to come out and spend. If they do feel confident, they are. And what we're seeing at the moment with the better economic news on interest rates, on mortgages, on wages, and sort of broader economy, the fact that we avoided a recession in the second half of last year, and that any recession might be shallow, we can see that the soil is warm. Customers are ready to come back out and spend. And touching wood, we're also hearing from operators that January and February has not been as bleak as they perhaps envisaged. They're weak months anyway, but spend has held up.
Yeah, we've actually heard a really similar thing across the board from our clients, that December was disappointing, and I think a lot of that was due to the impact of the rail strikes, but their January and February has been kind of better than they expected, and I think that hopefully puts us in a good place as we go into kind of the spring months as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it does show signs of positive. I mean, just a caution, January and February being better than expected, they were forecasting that it would fall off a cliff. So better than expected is still, anemic levels of growth, anemic levels of sales, but it has held up equivalent to sort of September, October last year.
Yeah. And I think that's great. And I think, there is lots, hopefully, I know they'll be impacted by the rail strikes, but with all the kind of bank holidays and like Eurovision, all these special events that happen in throughout these spring and summer months, really hopefully that will impact guest behaviour and push people out into those hospitality businesses a bit more. And I think you touched on a little bit there around that kind of guest loyalty piece. And I think one thing that we've found at Bums on Seats is that within these changes within guest behaviour, people are there is those kind of wins are guest loyalty. So it's making people loyal to your brand. And it's also those occasion bookings as well. One of the things that we've found is that people will be going out maybe a little bit less, but those occasion bookings, that birthday party, that special event, that hen party, that baby shower, they're more important than ever, I think. And especially when there are kind of downturns with the economy, there is almost like a need to kind of go and celebrate those occasions when you can.
Absolutely. I mean, there's the economists always talk about the lipstick index when we go into recession, and how lipstick sales come up because people want to still have a little bit of a treat. They might not go and buy the full outfit, but they still want a lipstick. And I think you see that in hospitality as well, that people might not be doing the foreign holiday, might not be doing the big spend, the big ticket items in the house, but will still want to go out for an everyday treat. And sort of that's the last thing that goes. So I think you're absolutely right.
That's so interesting. I've never heard of the lipstick index before.
Have you not?
No, I've written.
It was an American economist in the 90s that first noticed it, that while we went into recession in the early 90s, and then again post the financial crash, that people went into recession, but Estee Lauder sales of lipstick went up. And it was that everyday little treat that people were getting themselves. And it's the same with your cup of coffee. It's the same with your trip down to the pub, or as you say, the experiences. And I think it's coming off that COVID bounce where we had 2 years where we couldn't do those things. We really value them now going forward, and it's such a core part of what we do.
Yeah, 100%. And I think so from your perspective as well, in terms of that loyalty, that occasion bookings, have you seen any innovations across the sector that brands have put in place to kind of drive guest loyalty and occasion bookings? Have you seen anything that's really stuck out as a cool innovation?
Well, I think people are using those tools that they had during COVID for order and pay ahead and book ahead and buying guest experiences. We are seeing that coming through into the hospitality sector, that sort of red letter day of gifting people coming through. I did the same over Christmas. My daughter, when she went back to university, I gave her a gift card for loungers as a sort of additional gift, Christmas present, so that they could go out and have a sort of welcome meal back. And I think you can see that coming through much more strongly, that people who did do that payment and order ahead technology during COVID are keeping with it now, and it has become a bit more sticky, particularly with Gen Z.
Yeah. I think as well, that is such a good point about that kind of gifting. I think before COVID, this idea of kind of gift vouchers and experiences and stuff for hospitality was quite a bit of a rarer thing than it is now. Now it is pretty much every business has those gift cards and experiences available to buy, and there's been a definite shift in kind of guest behavior in terms of how you can spend your money with the hospitality businesses. You can do that gifting as well, which is quite new, I think.
Yes, you can. And also, I think, again, the behaviour amongst Gen Zs and students in particular, who have really embraced the at-table ordering, gifting somebody a drink in a Wetherspoons in a different outlet where there is at-table ordering, where you can say, I'm sending you to using the app, even remotely, and sending you a gift so you can have a nice night out. That's coming through quite strongly as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we work quite closely with Toggle, and they obviously do a lot of gift cards and experiences in the hospitality industry, and they shared with us some insane kind of success stories of businesses that kind of launched them and really did quite clever marketing campaigns behind them, and it's a great kind of alternative revenue stream for businesses. So I was actually reading Propel just before we jumped on, and there was an article in there this morning that was quoting you, and it was urging kind of operators to tap into the potential talent pool of prison leavers and ex-offenders. And I think I read that, and I thought that actually seems like a really great initiative. And I think, there is some other great work going on in the sector around the recruitment crisis, like Mark McCulloch's Hospitality Rising campaign. They're doing some great work kind of changing the perception of hospitality as a career. And I think, the recruitment crisis is a really big challenge. And as you said in Propel today, a lot of operators can't function at their 100% level because they don't have the staff to do that. And I just wondered, what advice would you give to operators who are struggling with the current recruitment crisis?
Well, I think you're right. We need to be getting better at embracing a wider range of potential recruits to the industry. And all of this work comes together collectively to change the perception of the sector, to get people to think about it again. Whether it's older workers over 50s, returners to work, students who have got out of the habit of having summer jobs and Saturday jobs, or disabled workers, long-term sick, unemployed, prison leavers, ex-offenders, homeless. There's a wide range of industry initiatives. And I think it demonstrates as well what a powerful force for good hospitality can be in reaching out and supporting lots of these people, but also how, the message that we've always taken to young people can resonate with a different set of workforce and a different set of people who've got more complex needs or different needs. Hospitality trains you and teaches you common transferable soft skills, which are then a launch pad, not just to a career in hospitality, but also a career in any other sectors. And what many of these people need is a sort of supported pathway back into employment. I think what I would say to lots of employers out there is really work with your local job centre plus. They're not just for people who are giving out benefits or people who are long-term unemployed. Job Centre Plus does have a real focus on hospitality as a route through to work for a wide range of people, and the work coaches who are there will work proactively to fill those vacancies for you. And often I find that lots of local people, local businesses, smaller businesses haven't thought to tap into that potential, just think of it as about being a route through for a small group of people. So really work with those people, and then start to be flexible as well about your terms and conditions of employment, because a lot of those people might need variable hours, might need lower hours, and might need just sort of temporary part-time jobs, Saturday jobs. So start on that basis and build up slowly. And then thirdly is to reach out and use the resources that are available freely on the UK Hospitality website. We have our workforce strategy in there, which has guides on employing over 50s, employing disabled people. We work closely with Only a Pavement Away and Hospitality Rising to reach those two different groups. And you can tap into those as well.
Yeah, I think that's all really great advice. And I think, you know, one of my favorite things about the hospitality industry is that there is kind of no barrier to entry. You can come in so junior and you can really work your way up, and that's not a common thing in many other industries. And I think it is such a beautiful thing about the sector that people can come in as a waiter, waitress, and kind of work their way up to kind of director. All you really need is that desire to learn and a passion for the industry.
And I think the other thing is that it's the speed at which you can do it, because no other sector will delegate authority and responsibility to you at such a young age and at such a low level within an industry. If effectively each individual outlet is run as its own business, and so you can go from entry level to manager of that site within 18 months, 2 years, and very rapid progression in terms of pay and terms and conditions too. So I think we need to celebrate the speed at which that meritocratic rise happens, not just the fact that it does happen, because all too often we're talking to young people and you're showing them somebody my age, or, you know, one of the other industry leaders who are, anybody who's over 25 to an 18-year-old looks old. So we need to be talking to them about those 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds who are running their own site, running their own business, driving forward. And the other thing is that, you know, we talk quite a lot about about that skill and that upskilling and investment in people, and we need to make sure that we can show that that's a living, breathing reality for everybody. So that's why our hospitality charter and our hospitality pledge is so important, new ones that we've just launched, so you can give commitments to those young people entering the sector that they will have continuous development, that they will be trained, that they will be looked after. And that's also part and parcel. We're only as strong as the weakest link in our sector. And I always challenge back and push back to politicians or to people in job centres. This is not a low skill industry. None of the jobs that we talk about that are entry level are no skill or low skill. It's very skilled work that we're talking about here. What we are is no experience, and we will train you up so you can realise your full potential.
Absolutely. And I think in that breath, kind of, you were talking about, you know, the industry kind of widening the net and kind of employing all different types of people from all different types of backgrounds. And I think obviously we know that there's been quite a big conversation about diversity and inclusivity across the sector that's been happening over the past sort of few months. I think as an industry, we realised that we might not be where we thought we were in terms of being diverse and inclusive. And I think for us to be able to combat that challenge of the recruitment crisis, we do need to be more diverse and more inclusive as a sector. So I think from your side, what advice would you give to operators who want to kind of go forth, make a difference, make a positive change, and ensure that diversity and inclusivity across their business?
I think it's a really important point, because, you know, when you've got a wide talent pool that's available to you, lots of workers that are available, you don't have to think about those things as carefully as you might otherwise have done. But if we're in a real labour crisis, which is what we are, You know, we know there's demographic change. We know there are societal changes, which means that we've got 10% vacancy rates and have done for the last year. You can't afford to be complacent. You have to work to make sure that you are putting out a positive message and communicating as widely as you can. And ultimately, you can't look after your customers unless you've got a diverse and inclusive workforce that reflects all of their needs. You know, how do you understand what a disabled customer is facing, or somebody who might feel excluded, if you don't have that diversity on show within your workforce too? So there's a very important commercial rationale behind it, twofold, but both in terms of customer service, but also in terms of you can't afford to leave any talent on the sidelines. I think the first thing I would say is that for many businesses, it's the same with sustainability. Diversity, equality, inclusivity seems like such a huge challenge for them. They don't know where to start, and it's about bite-sized chunks and making sure that you've got the right steps in place, the foundations in place to be positive and inclusive. And again, lots of resources available on our website, on Women in Hospitality, Tourism and Leisure website, which looks at diversity and inclusivity in the round, with standard policies that people can adopt, small tips and tricks that they can do to make sure that their recruitment is inclusive, that they're recruiting blind, that they're recruiting without putting barriers in place, that they don't have those inbuilt biases. So there's lots of easy things that they can do. And also, it's just about talking to people. I mean, I also sit as, I'm a government disability access ambassador. And again, lots of people worry about physical changes to the premises, ways in which people need to work. Don't make assumptions on behalf of those excluded or those protected characteristics. Talking to people and making sure that there's a broader understanding is often all you need to do to make people feel more included. So to have that dialogue, have that conversation, find out what they want, what would make them feel better, and you'll be surprised how small the changes need to be.
Yeah, amazing. That's all great advice, and I think you're dead right as well. I think one of the things that I spoke about on another one of these interviews is that, as you said, your team should reflect the diverse nature of your customer base. You know, these hospitality businesses have got people from all walks of life, all different backgrounds that come into their venue, and the team should reflect that, because you know that will give you that competitive advantage as well. So yeah, that's amazing advice, Kate. Thank you so much. That was so insightful. Yeah, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and just best of luck to all of those hospitality businesses listening who are, I know, going through a really difficult time. There's a real perfect storm, but I know that what we learned through the pandemic is that we as an industry are incredibly collaborative, incredibly supportive. Nobody needs to be out there suffering on their own. There's lots of help and advice and support available, and that hopefully with working together we will come through this stronger and better equipped to face into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Thank you so much, Kate. Really appreciate your time.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.